Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good evening, whichever the case may be.
Sorry, say that again.
I said, or evening, whichever the case may be.
Here is night, so it's 11 p.m.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches. Buenas noches, amigo.
I've
Let's
been
see.
trying to remember my Spanish from learning it in Texas. It's been a long time, but I remember I learned Mexican Spanish, which is subtly different from Spain Spanish.
I mean,
It's
a
still
good
Spanish.
a good Mexican Spanish, you can go around the world with that. So
Yeah.
I'm sure. I mean, Spain also is a small country, but we have like different accents in totally
Oh
different
yeah.
accents. In the south is totally crazy. So your Mexican Spanish will be totally enough for traveling around Spain. I'm sure about that. Hey, Jason.
Jason, how's your Spanish?
Four. I I know a few words, but definitely not conversational.
What'd you take for a foreign language in school?
I took Spanish, but remember very little of it. But even then, I was never great at conversational level.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
kind
was
of
fortunate enough.
there.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough while I was going through high school and a little bit in college to work in the food service industry where there just happens to be a lot of Spanish speakers.
Mhm.
So they thankfully gave me the opportunity to practice my Spanish rather than them practicing their English with me. They had everybody they can practice their English with, but I wanted to practice my Spanish, and so I learned a lot about food.
Yeah,
Which arguably is one of the better things that comes out of Texas. It's probably the only thing. It and the thunderstorms are the only thing that I miss.
yeah, yeah. I've definitely never had the opportunity to um, learn a foreign language in you know, uh, practical manner,
Yeah,
outside of the classroom, which is not very useful, I think.
yeah, it's not. I took uh I took Russian in college,
Really?
and yeah, and it's fascinating language, but I just can't make my mouth do it. And at a previous job, one of the engineers working under me was Moldovan, and so he spoke Russian, and so he helped me a little bit in practicing that up a little bit, and then but I never really like in college as I just had school that I was that was my only available practice, so I never nothing really stuck as far as vocabulary. I still remember like the grammar, most of the grammar and the alphabet, um, but vocabulary is just not there.
Yeah. Well, that's one of those things that, in my older age now, I kind of regret not learning another language when I was younger and my brain was more you know, capable of learning those kinds of things.
Yeah, it's actually one disadvantage that you and I have growing up in English speaking country because everybody wants to speak English.
Yeah.
So you go over to Europe and people speak five, six different languages because there's a bunch of languages over there and you need to learn multiple languages. And then you come, or even the Middle East, there's tons of languages in that area, and you need to know all those languages. And then you also learn English. For
Yeah.
English, it's like that's what business is conducted in. It's conducted in English. And
And academics. It's
yeah,
No, maybe Spain is not the best example in Europe about people speaking multiple languages, but as you said, it's totally different. For example, like Greek, Serbian, Croatia, Polish people, German people, they speak like easily 2 or 3 languages. And in most of those countries, for example, the TV, the movies sometimes are like in English, direct English. So if you want to see the last movies, the people just learned English, science kids seeing the typical movies. So yeah.
Yeah. Spanish is nice because you could probably get along with somebody from Portugal or get along with somebody from Italy. And
Yeah.
you may not be able to understand everything, but you could get by.
With Portuguese is like easier than in Italian, but
Yeah.
my perception is it's easier for Italian and Portuguese people understand Spanish than the opposite around. So Italian people, I think that, and Portuguese both are great at languages. And like, I don't know why, maybe it's the Spanish and Italian people I know that they are like great at languages, but definitely, I mean, they speak better. So for example, in Spain, our accent is like too strong. The English accent is like, is not as smooth like the Italian and the Portuguese. Yeah. But yeah, we are Mediterranean people, Latin stuff. So yeah, as you said, we can get along easy.
Yeah.
Okay, it's 8 minutes past the starting time. So I saw a message by Ben that he just landed in Bilbao for the Open Source Summit Europe, and maybe he will be connecting later. So I think that we can start if it's okay for you both.
Yep.
I'm going to share my screen. Before starting, I'd like to read very quickly the meeting etiquette. We would like to record the meeting for future reference and to share it with the community, and also to upload it to YouTube. So if someone in this meeting is against sharing this publicly in YouTube, just reach out to me privately, and I take care of no uploading this one. We encourage everyone to challenge any language or behavior that is harmful or not inclusive or against our code of conduct. We'll try to remain on mute when another person is speaking and use the Zoom reactions to ask for a time to speak. And with any further ado, 1 hour ago, we haven't an agenda because the GitHub action building agenda was failing. This is my bad. So I sent a pull request for fixing that. But we have 2 items added by JSON. First one is a discussion. What current features should be considered unstable? We discussed about this the past week a little bit. So this is one of the items. And the second item is issue in the spec repository. We should all agree what constitutes an implementation. We still have time to add more items. So if something pops in your mind, just directly edit the issue or add a comment or use the Slack channel contribute or TST discussion, any of those, and we'll add that item. Any comment so far related to the agenda?
Yeah, I've got a question. So remember that that paper that was submitted as a blog post? I just read that this morning. I was wondering if you guys actually read the paper.
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
Not me. I just read the blog article. I made sure that there was one paper there, and I did like a very quick fast reading that is like not efficient enough. So no, not my case.
Yeah, I just read it this morning, and I was surprised at how poor it was. it doesn't read like an academic paper at all, and it's just there's so many inaccuracies that my original suggestion of let's post it, but add a rebuttal, I don't think that's feasible, just because of the sheer amount of wrong it is. I had started writing up a response for the discussion, but I can't see that it would make sense for us to post that blog, unless they want to work with us on fixing the inaccuracies, and potentially resubmitting it. But I have a feeling.
Yeah, that was my assessment as well. As soon as I like really got into it, I was like, this is not good topic for good subject matter for us to be putting in our blog.
Yeah. And to be clear, like, I don't have a problem with criticism of JSON schema. I think there's plenty to criticize, and I think the paper is correct in some of that criticism, but I just think that there's too many inaccuracies in the paper as a whole, for us to properly address.
Yeah.
One question. Do you both think we can learn something or get some good insights from their work? Because maybe, okay, it's true that there might be inaccuracies there, or things that are partially true or totally not. But if we can get from them some good insights, maybe we can try the effort, because the conversation is already there. So if we make the effort to work together and be transparent and open and say, okay, we can publish this, but as soon as the information is valid, right? And as soon as the information can help the community, why not? So let's try it. So they are like challenging us in the first response, like, this is what academic people do, discuss, blah, blah, blah. So let's try it.
So I think that he's got good data, but his conclusions, his recommendations are entirely useless to us. I think that he there's a lot of opinion in this paper, and as well as conjecture. So things like, we think that having too many keywords is confusing to users, and they're going to be less confused if there's fewer keywords.
Yeah. So he's recommending that the keywords that aren't used much be removed, things like dynamic ref. But at the same time, his data source that he's using is like primarily draft 4 through draft 7 schemas, for which dynamic ref isn't even defined. So of course you're not going to find usages of it.
Yeah,
that's part of it.
And that's not even like the problem that I see. Like, just because dynamic ref exists doesn't mean that it's going to confuse users because it exists. Like, if they're not using it, well, that's just conjecture that like fewer keywords are going to make it easier for schema authors to write schemas. There's no experimental evidence for that. So that's my problem with it. But I think what is good data is, what are the errors that schema authors are making, and then we can use that to write linting tools and such like that.
Exactly.
And stuff. But yeah. But
Yeah, that was the other thing. That was the other thing that came out of the DM discussion is Juan, Ben, and myself were all recommending that the suggestions that they're making be put into linting tools, whereas they're suggesting the spec needs to change in order to make things easier. And I was like, and every one of us were like, no, we just need better tooling.
Yeah.
You're not using Notepad to edit schemas, you're using VS Code, and if VS Code can help you, then it should.
Right. Every programming language that exists you can write nonsense programs. You can write code that is never reachable. Like that is a very normal thing of any language, and just like any other language, JSON schema doesn't constrict every possible way that you can, write a nonsense schema. That's what linters are for. And that's one of the things that I plan to address in that discussion.
I was planning to reply to, and in my case, my feeling, not reading the paper, but reading the blog post is like they are just putting like 2 or 3 highlights without taking care of putting a little bit of context and making clear what are the intent, what is their intent, like publishing this in a way that is useful for the people. It's like it seems just useful for them. So and to publish this, we need first that context, make it clear who they are and whether it's the academic purpose, but put something in the end that can help the people navigate all that information, and we can work together on that, saying, hey, if they are open to listen to some of those arguments that you just said about draft 4, draft 7, what the tooling can do and what the documentation can do. So maybe we can turn this in, at least it's a fun discussion for someone to read, or maybe a more useful post for the community. And I think that as a community guy, not a JSON schema expert, is what I can advocate for. Protect the community and do something that is useful for them. So they are in the discussion. Let's continue there and see where we go together. What I did also is, after reading their reply, I made an amendment in my pull request with the blog guidelines, because I was like creating a first paragraph saying who can submit blog post, and that list was like closed, and there was a group of people called champions, and we don't have a definition about JSON schema champions. Until we have one, I just made an amendment to add a proposal of description. What is our understanding of JSON schema champion? So, because if this ends in a way that we have a common vision and a blog article that is useful for the community, those academic creating this blog, they can be champions, right? So let's work on that. Champions, people loving the schemas.
I just had a great idea.
I mean, I'm the positive. Let's see.
So what if we were to have like a JSON schema certification, and then like every single certification, there's a charge, and that could be a way to fund the project.
That will be amazing. What I can tell you is those free certifications are an easy way to attract a lot of people and increase adoption. I saw that in Twilio when I was working there. They created a free code camp. There was not a certification, but was a course, like 3-hour course, super well produced, and that have like 3 million views or something like that. That was crazy. And that was so good data and experience that they decided to create a LinkedIn learning certifications for free for the people. So for me, but that will be amazing. The thing is having the little bit of budget to do good, produce a good result, and someone with time and those teaching skills, right? Maybe you.
Yeah.
So when you said that, Greg, the first thing that came to my mind was the Scrum certifications that cost a ton of money and don't actually, do much.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily charge a bunch of money for it. That seems ridiculous. But I think being able to put that somebody is like, I mean, if you want to define a JSON schema champion, well, maybe they have something to back it up. Like, you do the free course, you do like a free code camp or whatever, but then in order to become a champion, you have to like go through this exam or whatever, show that you know what you're talking about. And then you just get some kind of like a GitHub sticker or something. It's like, oh, I know JSON schema.
Yeah, I think that the training, at least the beginner training, is like the entry level to have more people testing or going deeper with the technology. And for experts and stuff, so maybe we can, instead of like creating very specialized training, maybe we can like have those an ambassador program or something that if they are like releasing implementations or writing articles or speaking at conferences, so we can decide what is the contribution that we accept. So they can turn like the typical champions program, like in AWS or in GitHub or all of those. So we can. This is in the roadmap to some point in time, but yeah, we're a small team.
But if you go to Microsoft to get support now, you don't get a Microsoft employee. You get some person who's giving their free time in order to support you, but they in return they get like this status of I am, a Microsoft support person, which carries weight in circles, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, replying questions in the community is also another kind of contribution. So,
meanwhile, Microsoft gets free support.
Exactly.
Microsoft, the poor company.
Yeah.
Can't even support their own support or afford their own support staff.
So,
all right, let's move on.
Let's go to the agenda. So we decided to provide feedback in the discussion. So we have like a common view about the opportunity, but also the things that are like inaccurate or partially false or so on. So if you are going to reply, Jason, that's great. I will provide my feedback too regarding the clarifying in the article, like what is the purpose and what is the benefit for the community, because they like rush too much with the comments. And if you, Greg, have something there that didn't reply in the pull request, so yeah, let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
I'm going to share again my screen to show the agenda. So any preference, Jason, for starting with the topics or just in the same order?
Yeah, I guess we could start at the beginning.
All yours.
Yeah. Unfortunately, what I was hoping for was to get more voices on this issue than just me and Greg, who are the only ones I believe who have commented on this so far. But it doesn't hurt to have a in-person conversation about it anyway. So this topic is about what do we consider stable for the stable release, and what isn't stable, and what do we do with those things that we don't consider stable. I guess we kind of decided what we're going to do with things that we don't consider stable. They're going to be pulled out into their own spec. But yeah, I suppose we can go, like, I wrote out a list of things that for us to talk about, but of you know, things that may or may not be stable. But I guess we start off with, does anybody have any overall statements that they want to, you know, express their the way they're thinking about this before we go to deep?
Despite my comments about schema and ID, I think they need to be in the spec. We just have to promise not to change them. So we need to be sure that we get them right. I did add another comment, I guess, or late last week, or maybe over the weekend, depending on how your calendar aligns. Regarding contains, we had initially, I had proposed, I went back and looked at all the history on this, and I had proposed that contains could also look at objects, and we were all like, yeah, let's do that. Everybody was on board for using contains to also look at objects. And then recently I was going through open issues, and I found an issue where Henry was like, maybe contains shouldn't be looking at objects. And then everybody was like, yeah, let's revert that change. So I don't know where contains stands at this point. Currently in the spec, it does look at objects. If we revert the change so that it only looks at arrays, then we probably should add keywords for an object contains kind of thing, and we would need the contains and also a min and max to parallel min and max contains. I really don't have a preference on which way it goes, but if we do revert it, then contains is stable. If we don't revert it, then contains is not stable. So that's one thing on there.
I've never had an opinion on whether it should be one keyword or two. So wherever, you know, anybody with a strong opinion lands, I'm okay with that. I would say, however, that it makes things less complicated with the stable spec to be able to say, you know, contains is stable, and you know, object contains is not.
Yeah. If then else, let's see, then and else are unique, they depend on the evaluation result of if. I don't think the behavior there is changing. I think we're just looking at changing the mechanics of how that works, or the mechanics of how it's explained in the spec.
Yeah.
I think the behavior itself is pretty well defined, and I don't think that's going anywhere.
Yeah, I think that this was poorly defined in the first place, to have made it such that that evaluation result, like a keyword, is dependent on the evaluation result of another. That should have never happened, but it did, and it's very commonly used, and I don't think it should change because
Okay,
ingrained.
just for the for kicks, how would you have had that work?
it would have needed to be one keyword. So either an array with you know, first key being or first element being if, second element then,
Okay.
third else,
So
or sub keywords like an if then else.
so you'd wrap it in one keyword, like
Yeah,
a conditional keyword or something. Okay.
yeah,
That's still an option in the future if we wanted to do that.
right.
Okay. So yeah, I think those are stable. Vocabulary system, yeah, is very incomplete. Dynamic ref, I was actually talking with Henry a little bit about this just to get some history and get his point of view of why the bookending is required. And in discussing it, we both kind of landed on it's not explicitly required, but it does help to have a ref target in the case, like if you have a schema that has dynamic ref but doesn't define a dynamic anchor, the dynamic ref is going to fail. But then my point was I would prefer to give the schema author the choice of, do you want it to fail or do you want it to just resolve to this default thing? And the bookending does the latter of having it resolve. So removing the requirement for bookending still allows bookending if the author wants it.
Right.
So I think removing that is good. However, it will, because dynamic ref is currently defined to respect $anchor. And I think that needs to change. I think we should have two separate referencing mechanisms. And right now they kind of overlap a little bit. I think the dynamic ref needs to be considered unstable while we fix it. Unevaluated.
Well,
I don't think that.
let me comment on that one.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. I think that I think it makes sense to say that dynamic ref is not stable. There's also one other change that I think makes sense, and is to remove the initial resolution case. It's not necessary when dynamic when the book ending goes away, and so it just makes the keyword more complicated. But
is that not the bookending requirement? Are they not the same thing?
there's no, it's an additional thing on top of that.
Okay.
But it is kind of, they are very related in that removing the book ending means you don't need the initial resolution.
Okay.
So, but anyway, one thing that we have to keep in mind there, as well as with the vocabulary system, is that if we call these things unstable, they are integral to evaluating or validating a schema, because our meta schemas use both of those things. So
Yeah.
So we have to decide what that means for us. Like, do we want to allow, or do we want to expect that that people are implementing unstable features? Because otherwise you can't really, implement the you can't write an implementation at all without these two features.
Yeah, maybe that means they need to be lumped in with the schema and ID thing where we have to get it right and just make it stable. Vocabularies.
dynamic ref, but not with vocabulary system. They
Well,
just
I think I have separately, we can discuss it separately, but I have my proposal on changing vocabulary to dialect, and that includes the entire file tree thing that I describe in that issue, where we have all the assertions go down into the keyword files, and vocabularies are just collections of keywords and blah blah blah. I think I wonder if we can just keep vocabulary the way it is, as kind of a band-aid, kind of just hold it in place until we figure out something better, and then when we do figure out something better, we put it under a different keyword.
that's a possibility. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
even if
yeah,
that something better isn't my proposal, it's, you know,
yeah,
whatever it needs to be, it just becomes a different keyword.
yeah. I do have concern about introducing, a keyword or as stable that we know is imminently going to be um, deprecated, because I mean we're going to have to maintain that for years if we do that.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean there's definitely pros and cons to it.
yeah. Sounds like we need more opinion.
Yeah.
Um, unevaluated. Um, so we're adding it so it considers the items validated by contains. So if you have prefix items looking at indexes 0 and 1, and then you have an items keyword, and then you have an instance with like 20 things in it, and number 15 matches items, but it also matches and it's the only one that matches contains. Then unevaluated items would look at, well, I guess if you have items in there, then everything else is considered okay. So get rid of items. So if you have prefix items looking at the first two indices and contains matches on index 15, then unevaluated items would look at everything except for those three indices.
Yeah.
That's weird. Okay.
And that's not how it worked when it was first introduced.
Yeah. And then
Yeah, I don't know about this one. That's it has changed recently. It's I don't know, I don't know how clear it is that it's widely used, but it is definitely solving a real problem. So is that, I don't know where that puts those keywords as far as whether they should be stable initially or not. I do think that they're problematic in that how dynamic they are, and I would love to find a different solution that can be more static. But uh, I think probably the best approach here is to introduce those as stable, and hopefully in the future uh, replace them with something that's not so dynamic.
Even with the contains change, introducing the stable.
Yeah, I kind of think that the best thing is not necessarily to iterate on these. I think they should just be what they are, and then if we need to replace them, we'll replace them.
Okay.
I could go either way on this one though, but I'd lean towards just including it. Again, I think that would be like, I don't want to have to maintain those forever, or if or not forever, but for a long time, if we do end up finding something better. But
Yeah. Items and prefix items. Okay, so I think one thing that I would like to consider is the fact that 2012 has been out for nearly 3 years now. People are fairly used to the ideas that are in it. And if I think we're probably to the point where if nothing changes from 2012, it should be considered stable. Items isn't changing as far as I'm aware. Prefix items is already in there and it's not changing. Right, I think those should be stable.
I think those should probably be stable as well. I included that in this list mostly because one of the leading theories, or not theories, but approaches that people wanted to take was to set like anything that was in the draft 7 set as stable, and then anything that came after that is potentially not.
So you're using draft 7 as your comparison, as your base.
Yeah, that's why I included those.
Okay.
And in part why unevaluated is there as well.
Yeah.
Anything that I called relatively new is 2919 or 2019-09 or later features.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other comment regarding the issue? I'll keep promoting it to see if we can get more opinions. Hopefully we will.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like we're mostly on the same page that I think most of this stuff should be stable.
Yeah.
Vocabularies and dynamic ref are a little bit up in the air.
But also integral to how JSON Schema works. Or at least how the meta schemas work.
Yeah. And we could absolutely say that we expect that unstable things are implemented. And so
yeah.
And so maybe it doesn't matter if it's not stable.
Yeah.
So we'll go. Sorry, go ahead.
I would like to hear from Julian if on this topic, if he has had a chance to catch up enough.
I haven't fully. Yeah. Also, sorry. Give me 2 minutes to come down to earth. Sorry. I don't know them. Yeah. Give me 2 minutes and I'll give you a cohesive thought. I'm just finishing stuff in the background.
All right. So I've been thinking about tackling updates to ID in the spec as one of the next things that I look into. We've talked in the past about getting rid of the canonical language regarding IDs. So that's one of the things I'd like to tackle. And then we've also talked about what was the other thing? Oh, the crossing pointers crossing schema resource boundaries. I forget exactly what it was about that, but something was not forwards compatible about that we needed to address.
I reread that section recently. I'm not sure what would not be forward compatible.
I'm gonna have to look it up, but I remember there was some issue that we talked about.
The relevant section. Well, that's not even, that's the current document.
Okay, sorry. Did I interrupt another train of thought?
No, you're not. I switched over to a different tab, and so I have to find it again. It's 921. Relevant section is 921. That's where it's currently defined. I am getting a little feedback here, Mike, Julia.
Aha, that's not good. I say it's not good because what I spent the last hour doing is recording my keynotes. I hope that didn't happen on the video, but anyways, is it still feeding back?
Oh no, I can hear myself.
Ah, okay. That's just
I
me
don't think
pointing
that's
the
going to be a
mic.
problem for you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can't find me, Julian.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Sorry, Jason. Which one were you asking? What I thought about this unstable stuff?
Well, yeah, the whole topic in general, or if you want to pick any of those from that list to express an opinion on.
Yeah, I mean, I think my opinion still. I'm sort of going with the flow. But if you ask me what my opinion is, I personally think everything should be stable. By which I mean we shouldn't change anything that's not unbelievably high bar to change. So, in particular, I think in my opinion, the unevaluated items change is bad. That's the only one that I actually remember that's in there, other than ID changes, which I don't think anyone will care about. But yeah, if you're asking for my opinion, I still would treat way more things stable than the two of you, I think.
Yeah.
But as I say, yeah.
I think we actually did agree that just about all of this stuff should be stable when we release. Although we did we are expecting some changes to schema and ID and dynamic ref. Although we expect them to be stable once we release in the next schema release or spec release.
Yeah. I mean, super high level, I think we should minimize absolutely everything that doesn't have really good reasoning behind it. So, like harmonizing two keywords that don't work exactly the same is not necessarily good reasoning to me.
Yeah.
But if there's stuff that's critically broken, like I definitely haven't seen whatever dynamic ref change you're mentioning. So yeah, I'll look for that.
I don't think we've actually made that change yet.
What's it about? It's the bookending nonsense.
Yeah. We did. We have made the bookending change. There's another one removing the initial resolution step, which has not been changed yet.
Okay. I have to think through that one again. Does the bookending one actually represent a backwards incompatible change?
Well,
I don't think so, right? It just lets you do something that you couldn't do before. Or am I misremembering?
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
Yeah, so that one I'm totally fine with. It's something that didn't work before and now will work now.
Yeah.
I think.
The one thing that will change is a feature that's currently written in that I don't think anybody will use, is that dynamic ref does respect $anchor
Right. Yeah.
for some reason. I cannot imagine that anybody's actually using that right now. I did come up with a weird potential use for it, but it's very contrived, and I don't know that. I doubt that anybody's actually using them in the wild.
So, yeah, that doesn't sound like something I've seen before either. Meaning, it probably sounds fine to me too.
The additional change of removing the initial resolution is it becomes unnecessary when you remove the bookending requirement, but it would change the value of dynamic ref from being a URL to being just the anchor name. Of course, we could also make that change in a backwards compatible way, which is using just the saying that it has to be a fragment only URI.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I probably can only half visualize that, so I think I'll watch out for the PR.
Okay. And what we were talking about with the vocabulary system, we know that that's has some significant problems. We know that we need to change some things. Greg and I were talking about, we're not sure if we want to just call that unstable, or if we just want to, go ahead and say it's it's stable, but we know we're going to deprecate it in the near future with a replacement of using a new keyword.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think I've voiced this opinion before, but my opinion would be whatever we're calling unstable just means planned deprecation more so than anything else. Would be my preference. I'm not saying that's what's been decided. I know you folks have slightly looser definitions, I think, than I do. Like I would treat everything as stable, which basically means if you want to change anything that's not backwards compatible, it has to go through some deprecation period. Whether that concept itself should be called calling things unstable or not is just semantics to me. Basically, that's my overall opinion, is like everything's stable, which just means if we want to change stuff, you have to deprecate it first. That's if you're asking my opinion. But if there's good consensus on some of these changes, then I'm happy to take a back seat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm concerned about calling something stable that we know isn't. Like we know it's going to be replaced by something, or is going to need a change in the future. Like I think that just puts more work onto implementers and even for schema authors who now have to know that there's two different ways to do vocabularies or whatever, and you have to pick the right one.
You mean in a future world where we introduce the new thing?
Yeah. Like I don't want to have to maintain vocabularies for years because that's our deprecation process, even though like we knew that was an unstable thing that wasn't going to stick around.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. I think because it's out already and people are already using it, that for the most part, users will be taken by surprise by whatever we change, because they're not going to follow the development process.
Yeah.
So there's people out there that are using the vocabulary system as is right now.
Not many, but it exists.
Yeah. Well, let me put it this way. correct me if I'm wrong, but anyone who would be interested in the future one, I suspect is trying to use the current one. Like I don't think there's a big overlap between someone who wants to use the vocabulary system, but is ignoring it just because they see problems. Like I've never seen anyone come by and be like, I want to do X and the vocabulary system doesn't work yet for that, so I'm going to wait. No?
Yeah, you're probably right. If they need it now, then they're going to be using it. I also think that there's very high overlap of people who are power users following the community closely and people who are using vocabularies. I think there's very few people. There's probably nobody who's using vocabularies who is just like who doesn't really know what. Who isn't following along and going to be, not surprised from something new that comes up.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think what we're really trying to decide here is what keywords do we want to keep but still continue iterating on? Those things should be considered unstable. And if anything, I think if anything, that we don't anything that we don't mind replacing should be considered stable, like vocabularies. And just being pedantic, the keyword is actually vocabulary, but that keyword, we know that we know that its functionality needs to change, but we don't have a solution for that right now. And so the question is, do we want to keep the keyword? If we do, then we need to make it unstable. If we don't care about the keyword, then we can make it stable, or we can make that keyword stable and introduce a new mechanic later deprecating vocabulary. And the same principle goes for any of these. I think that a lot of this actually can be considered stable, except for the stuff that we're adding. Like property dependencies is a new keyword that's not published yet, so that needs to be considered unstable until we have, usage data that people are implementing it and people are using it, etc.
So I think that dynamic ref is really the only thing that falls into that category of we are still iterating on it, and not we may replace it. Well, I guess we still may replace it with something else, but that's so unknown at this point. We're not considering.
Right. But the change that we're making to dynamic ref is so inconsequential that I think calling it stable is fine.
I do too. And again, just like with the vocabulary thing, I think that anybody who's savvy enough to be using dynamic references, especially considering we haven't documented it at all, is going to be savvy enough to make any changes that might come up.
Yeah.
Which should be minor, if any, anyway.
Julian, do you have an opinion on contains and whether or not it should reference objects? Currently, it only references it only applies to items. And we've made an unpublished change to have it also apply to objects. Do you have a preference there?
What would it mean? It matches on the values or the keys or both?
The values.
My initial reaction, who knows how much this is worth, my initial reaction would be, it seems unnecessary to reuse the keyword rather than adding another one, like adding a values contain or a keys contain keyword that just both that match against whether one of the keys match something or one of the values match something.
Yeah.
Then you just avoid the question.
Yeah, well, no, that was good. But a detail that might be relevant is that we're not talking about adding one keyword. We're talking about adding three, because it's not just object contains. It's object min contains and object max contains as well. I don't know if that matters, but it ends up being like a bit of a keyword proliferation.
Yeah.
Kind of issue.
Yeah, I'm trying to think whether which one bothers me less or more or whatever.
And I don't think there's a right answer.
Yeah, the reason I think there's extra pause is because we seem to go through like a slight waffling there on whether we like keywords that apply to different types or not. Like I can't remember what specifically, but someone broke up dependencies, right? Or yeah, dependencies was broken up because it referred either, I mean, okay, that's the type of the object in the schema.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing happened with.
But I'm pretty sure that. Go ahead.
And the same thing happened with items, where it had two forms and then it became two keywords.
Yeah.
But I don't think we've
so
ever
I don't know how
like the two different types of things. That's a slightly different.
like, but this one kind of stands out relative to existing keywords to me, I guess. Like why would contains work for both arrays and objects, but min length only works for strings and not arrays? Or
good point.
Like I don't think there's an example of us splitting up something like this, but there's examples of existing keywords that aren't polymorphic.
Yeah.
That could have been. So I would probably personally lean towards keyword proliferation, but that's just my first impression. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with having lots of keywords, to be honest.
Okay. I'm convinced. Jason and I were both like perfectly centered on the fence, and so we just needed the smallest little nudge either way.
Well, I'm glad you didn't express an opinion, because that probably would have colored mine. I would say I'm pretty close to the center, but slightly leaning towards this way.
Sounds good. All right, so that knocks contains into the stable bucket then.
Yeah. There's of course a third keyword. Lest I be perceived as proposing it, I am not. But if you're going to do like property contains and value contains, then there's also item contains for simultaneous matching of both. So if you only have key contain and value contain, you can only do independent assertions about whether a property matches a schema and a value matches a schema, but you can't do a match on whether they both simultaneously match a schema.
Mm.
And all of doesn't work for that because they could be independent keys and values that match.
Right.
So you might be talking about 3 keywords times min and max, so 6. Or maybe I just avoided the problem, right? Maybe you have one keyword that matches both simultaneously, and then if you want to spell values contain or key contain, then you put true in one of the 2 values.
But what if the value wants to be true and not just any?
Then you put const true in the other one. So basically, you take 2 schemas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the value of the keyword would be a pair, where the first one matches keywords and the second one matches value or properties and the second one matches values. We don't have something that works that way. It's just an idea.
Jason was actually saying that he preferred if then else worked that way. So
yeah,
which is
it's a shame
potential-
JSON doesn't have tuples.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can always fake a tuple with an array.
Yeah.
So guys, I gotta go. We're past time and I got another appointment.
Yeah.
So
Thanks everyone. So we have another item in the agenda, so we'll include it for the next week. Have a great day, everyone, and let's continue the discussion in Slack. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, I would like
Take
to
care.
see this discussion rendered as a comment on that issue 472.
I'll try my best. I'll try my best.
All right. If you need help, ask me or Jason.
Yeah, probably.
Probably have
I'll
to
ask
watch
you
the
for
video.
feedback to see if I'm not including any crazy unstable or stable stuff there. So yeah, I'll ask for feedback before
Yeah.
posting it. Thank you.
Okay.
Take care. See you tomorrow, Ben. Bye.